All right, 11 a.m. on this Tuesday morning. Let's see, it's July 28th. We do have a new potential tropical cyclone. I'll be honest with you, though. It doesn't mean anything different than what we've already been saying. Tropical wave in the Atlantic. I'll explain in just a bit the whole potential tropical cyclone. I wanted to go ahead and give you a tropical update, though, of what we're thinking and what's going on out there, why the wave really hasn't developed yet, and when we think it will develop. Just came in from cleaning the pool. Typical Florida day, hot and humid out there. Hey, check out my shirt. Life is good. Just add water. There you go. That's why I'm wearing the shirt and not the formal clothes today. Just got in from cleaning the pool. All right, let's get right to it and show you what we're looking at. There is the potential tropical cyclone 9. If you're confused on, well, what does that even mean, potential tropical cyclone? A few years ago, National Hurricane Center realized that they really didn't have a good way to warn countries, states, areas upstream if there wasn't an existing tropical system. So, for example, in this case, there isn't an existing tropical system. We know there's a tropical wave down there. So this is not a tropical storm yet. But it potentially will be, and probably will be. Okay, so it's just semantics. It's a way for them to be able to show you this forecast ahead of time. Okay, that's really all it is. So don't get caught up in the semantics. Will there likely be a tropical storm at some point in the next 24 to 48 hours? Yes. Will there would have been likely one, even if you didn't call it a potential tropical cyclone? Yes. In other words, nothing has really changed. We're just giving you a heads up. That's really a way to look at it. Here it is located right there where we said there's the Invest. It's called Invest 92L. It's a tropical wave. It's a circulating tropical wave, but it's very broad. You see this area right here. It almost kind of looks like a light grayish area. That's the dry air that's been inhibiting it to the north. It's kind of going in sync with it as of right now. So it'll be very interesting to see if it can break away from that or if it just continues to kind of go hand in hand with it. This is a little bit better view zoomed in. What I want you to notice on this view, a couple things. Number one, it's very broad still. This is the wave. And it's almost as if there's two little vortices in there. There's one right down in here. There's one right up in here. And sometimes you can call them gyres. Sometimes you can call them vortices. But there really isn't one coalesced center. In other words, there isn't one big center and everything's going around it. It's not really acting like that right now. Instead, it's like one big rotating wave. And what we think will happen is it will come together at some point here in the next couple of days as it approaches these Windward Islands, the West Indies of the Eastern Caribbean. Okay? Hence why you're going to see the tropical storm warnings in place for all those Windward Islands and Puerto Rico and the American Virgin Islands. All right? What's likely going to happen and what has been happening is instead of these two little vortices spinning together, you're likely going to see something come together and coalesce around one center. The reason why we cannot accurately predict the next 5 to 7 days where this is going to go is because until we have one center, there's no way to know where it will form. In other words, will it be here? Will it be here? And you might think, well, that's not that big of a difference. Well, it is when extrapolated 5 to 7 days down the road. It does become a big difference. Little errors now become big errors 5 to 7 days down the road. So Hurricane Hunter aircraft is going to fly in. Let's see, I have the schedule somewhere. Yeah, there you go. There's the plan of the day. And you can see they call it suspect area. So there's one flight. Notice these are all low-level flights, surface to 10,000. So what they're going to do is they're going to plan to do a few flights from this afternoon through tonight into tomorrow morning and figure out, is there a center coalescing somewhere? Notice down here it does say possible NOAA G4. What that means is maybe at some point tomorrow they'll fly the upper level jet around it to get a better idea of the high pressure surrounding it, which, by the way, we can talk about that. Let's first look at the Saharan air layer. Okay, there you go. That really gives you a good idea. Here's the wave. Look at all this dry air in the orange and yellow colors. Wow, that's a lot. I don't think it'll inhibit it necessarily 3 or 4 days down the road, but I do think it's not doing any favors. Let's put it that way. As of right now, it's definitely not doing any favors. Let's go look at this. This is kind of cool. This gives you an idea of where it is spinning and the dry air to the north of it. You can see it's very evident. See it spinning down there? So again, it's acting kind of like a large tropical storm already in that the whole thing is spinning, but it just hasn't coalesced around one center of circulation just yet. And by the way, this is all dry air coming down through here. This has been kind of the key theme to this forecast so far, is tons of dry air coming off the African continent, what we call the Saharan dust layer. It happens every year. It's just there's a little bit more of it as of right now. Let's look at some winds. I want to show you something. There's a lot of wind shear out in front, right here. Okay, it's coming right through here like this. It'll be very interesting to see how this tropical wave behaves with that. That could be an inhibiting factor. I think more so an inhibiting factor than the dust. I really do. I think a lot of people make a big deal out of dust, but we've seen with Dorian, we've seen with a lot of other storms, it can overcome the dust and almost kind of become its own little entity within the dust, as long as it doesn't have other inhibiting factors. The shear can really tear this thing apart if it is a factor in the next couple of days. The other thing I want you to notice is, let's assume that it does coalesce, and my gut is telling me it coalesces and forms more like down here. Again, the simple thing to do is just put the center in between those two little vortices, the two little gyres, but I have a feeling it might coalesce more down here. Well, if it does, it's going to take a west-northwestward path no matter what. But you see right here, Hispaniola, Dominican Republic, and Haiti, there's really tall mountains there. I can tell you right now, if this thing gets anywhere near those high mountains, it's going to absolutely just shred it. We even call it the hurricane shredder. And so let's assume that it tries to go through this area. That's going to play a role in what it does. All right, so right now what's happening is it's being steered by this big subtropical high pressure right out here. We sometimes call it the Bermuda high, and sometimes it nudges right into here. Right now it just happens to be out in here. So no matter what, it's going to move in that direction because of that. All right, not a big surprise. The computer models, believe it or not, have been surprisingly in good agreement, but I think for the wrong reasons. Again, until we can get a center, a true center, I wouldn't put too much into these models, both the Euro and the GFS. I had somebody ask me yesterday, yeah, but show us the Euro, it's always right. Actually, it's been horrible this summer season so far. I mean, it did a horrible job of Hanna. So horrible that a lot of meteorologists just tossed it aside. And I wouldn't be surprised if both the Euro and the GFS are not doing a good job right now. This is the Euro, this is the GFS on the right. They both are actually in pretty much agreement. Okay, west-northwestward movement. But what I want you to notice is, even though they both show a west-northwestward movement towards Florida, the problem with all these is, again, A, we don't have a true center yet. So you cannot track something that's not there yet. So if the center decides to form 150 miles to the southwest of where we're just kind of guessing it might be right now, that throws everything out of whack. The other thing I want you to notice is, I'm a big fan, by the way, of ensemble forecasting, meaning don't take an operational model. Instead, take spaghetti plots, take ensemble runs, put different ingredients in there, and then let's see what it does. Right here is the Euro ensemble. So as of right now, it's saying that if you take all the suspected low pressures and where they could be placed in there, that's about where they would be. Okay. All right, let's move this out in time. Okay, there they go. Now notice how there's a little bit of separation. Some show it a little bit farther north, some show it a little bit farther south. That might not seem like a big disagreement, but it is. North of the islands, interesting. That could maybe mean more of a northerly curve. South of the islands, interesting. It could be stronger and stay away from Hispaniola. Right over those islands, it could be totally shredded. So that's very interesting. Let's take this out to Saturday. Yeah. Let's stop at it Saturday morning. How about that? Now all of a sudden you see the eastern edge of the Euro ensemble is out here, and the western edge is all the way down here, maybe even south of Cuba. It's a huge, huge difference. If it's down here, it's coming into the Gulf. If it's here, it's not even going to touch Florida. It's going to recurve and go east. If it's in here, in the middle, that probably means it went right over Hispaniola, is a very weak tropical storm, and is limping into Florida as basically a rainmaker. See my point? There's just so many variations how this could play out. By the way, while we're on this page, let's look at the GFS at the exact same time for Saturday. It's not that different, actually. Now, it does seem to have a little bit more agreement in from here, east and west. It does seem to have it right over the Bahamas. But otherwise, it kind of has the same idea, which is by Saturday, it's probably in the Bahamas, either as a very, very weak tropical storm falling apart or as something a little bit stronger trying to drift to the north. It's interesting to note that none of the operational models really have it strong down here. I'm a little surprised because, again, if it develops a little bit farther south than we expect, I wouldn't be surprised if it does something more like a southerly route. So it's interesting that none of the global models are really saying that. So probably what's happening is they're essentially saying this high pressure is not strong enough to push it that far south. I'm not sure I believe that, but that's interesting. By the way, speaking of the high pressure, so on Saturday morning, notice the high pressure on the GFS model just happens to have it right there. Okay, let's go to the European at the same time. Isn't that interesting? It seems to have the high pressure poking a little bit farther to the west. Interesting. Which would mean it would think it's going to come into Florida as a possible tropical storm. Okay, because if you nudge it farther west with a stronger high pressure, it's not going to be able to make that quick turn to the north. So those are interesting, although it seems small, those are very interesting attributes of these computer models that right now might not be being taken into account down the road. All right, so let me give you a last look. So there's potential tropical cyclone 9, just to give you an update. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a fancy term for it will likely be a tropical storm at some point in the next 24 to 48 hours, and the potential is just there so that we can get the graphics out to you and give you a heads up. So the eastern Windward Islands, the West Indies, the Leeward Islands, Puerto Rico, the American Virgin Islands, there likely will be tropical storm conditions passing by in the next couple of days, no matter what you want to call it. Even right now as an open tropical wave, there's still 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts because, I mean, let's face it, again, it's a tropical wave. That's what they do. Assuming we're right and this develops into a tropical storm, there's been a lot of joking and talk about, well, what's that name? Isaias. That's the name. It looks like, to Americans, it looks like Isaias. It's not. That's not how it's declared. Isaias. That's what you're going to hear us talking a lot. So although it might be annoying, although it might sound a little weird, believe it or not, that is the proper term for this next tropical storm that's going to pop up on the list. So there you have it. This is Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. update. That's all I have for now. I don't want to go too long on this. I'm going to pop in occasionally here in the next few days, give you more updates, little tidbits of information. But I think that's a good start for what we're looking at, as it could either be dry or wet in Florida for this weekend, depending on which way this thing ends up going. All right, talk to you later.